June 13, 1944, Normandy, France. A column of 5 Sherman tanks rolls through a hedgerow-lined road. The crews are tense, but confident. They've trained for this. They know the terrain. They know the enemy. What they don't know is that 400 yards ahead, hidden in the shadows of a bocage tree line, a German Tiger tank has been watching them for 3 minutes. The Tiger commander has a perfect shot. His gunner is ready. The crosshairs are locked on the lead Sherman. But he doesn't fire. He waits. The Shermans roll closer. 350 yards. 300 yards. Still, the Tiger doesn't shoot. The German crew is sweating. Their fingers hover over triggers. Every instinct screams to fire first, but their commander raises his hand. Wait. 250 yards. The lead Sherman spots something. The commander opens his hatch, raises his binoculars. He's scanning the tree line. He sees the Tiger. He screams into his radio. The Sherman's turret swings toward the threat. The gunner fires. The shell streaks toward the Tiger and misses by 2 feet. Now the Tiger fires. 1 shot. The Sherman explodes. Before the other tanks can react, the Tiger fires again. Another Sherman burns. 2 more shots. 2 more kills. In 11 seconds, 4 Shermans are destroyed. The 5th retreats in panic. The Tiger never moved, never revealed its position until the enemy fired first. This is the story of how German tank commanders learned the deadliest lesson of armored warfare. Patience kills. Aggression dies. And the crew that shoots first usually loses. Let's go back. 1943. The Eastern Front. German Panzer divisions are fighting a losing war of attrition. The Soviets have more tanks, more men, more factories. For every German tank destroyed, the Soviets can build 5. The Germans can't win through numbers. They can't win through production. So they have to win through tactics, through positioning, through making every shot count, because they don't get second chances. Early in the war, German tank tactics were aggressive. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, fast movement, overwhelming firepower. Find the enemy, engage immediately, destroy, and advance. It worked brilliantly against Poland, against France, against early Soviet forces. But by 1943, the battlefield has changed. Soviet tanks are better. T-34s are fast, well-armored, deadly. KV-1S are nearly invincible from the front, and there are so many of them. German tank commanders start noticing a pattern. The crews that engage first often die first, because shooting reveals your position. The moment you fire, every enemy tank knows exactly where you are. Your muzzle flash is a beacon. Your smoke trail is a pointer. You've just painted a target on yourself. And if you miss, or if your target survives, you're now exposed, visible, vulnerable. The counterattack comes fast, and German tanks, even the mighty Tiger, can be killed if the enemy knows where to shoot. So German tank commanders start experimenting with a new approach. Instead of shooting first, they wait. They let the enemy reveal themselves. They let the enemy fire first and miss. Because here's the thing about tank warfare. The first shot is almost always the hardest. You're shooting at a target that might be moving, that might be partially concealed, that might be at an unknown range. Your first shot is often a guess, a calculated guess, but still a guess. But if you let the enemy shoot first, you learn everything. You see their muzzle flash. You know their exact position. You see where their shell lands. You can calculate their range. You know they're reloading. You have maybe 5 to 10 seconds before they can fire again, and in those 5 to 10 seconds, you fire. With perfect information, perfect aim, perfect timing. Your target is stationary, exposed, and they just gave you their exact coordinates. It's not a fair fight. It's an execution. The most successful German tank ace of all time, Kurt Knispel, used this tactic religiously. 168 confirmed tank kills, possibly over 200. He would position his tank in ambush, engine off, hidden, waiting, sometimes for hours. His crew would spot enemy tanks, call out ranges, identify targets. And Knispel would do nothing, just watch. His gunner would beg to fire. "We have a shot, Commander." Knispel would shake his head. "Wait." The enemy would roll closer. Still, he'd wait. Finally, an enemy tank would fire at something else, a different target. Maybe at a decoy, maybe at a suspected position, and in that instant, Knispel would fire. One shot, one kill. Then he'd reposition before the enemy even knew where the shot came from. This wasn't cowardice. This was mastery. He understood something most tank commanders didn't. In armored warfare, visibility equals death. The crew that stays hidden longest wins. Now let's talk about the psychology of this tactic. Because waiting to shoot goes against every human instinct. You're sitting in a metal box. You see an enemy tank. Your brain is screaming. Your adrenaline is pumping. Every fiber of your being wants to eliminate the threat. Now. Immediately. Before it kills you. Shooting first feels like taking control. It feels like being proactive. It feels safe. But it's not. Shooting first is often the most dangerous thing you can do because you're assuming you'll hit. You're assuming your first shot will be lethal. And if it's not, you've just started a fight you might lose. The discipline to wait, to watch, to let the enemy make the first mistake. That's incredibly hard. It requires training. It requires trust in your crew. It requires absolute confidence in your gunnery. But most of all, it requires psychological control. The ability to sit there, watching a threat, and not react. That's what separated elite German tank crews from average ones. The Germans even had a name for this tactic. Hinterhalt. Ambush. But it wasn't just about position. It was about patience, about information superiority, about letting the enemy defeat themselves. They would choose positions with natural concealment, tree lines, buildings, reverse slopes, anywhere they could see without being seen. They would study approach routes, identify where enemy tanks would likely appear, calculate ranges in advance, mark reference points. Then they would wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. And when the enemy finally appeared, the Germans had every advantage. They knew the range. They knew the terrain. They knew where to aim. The enemy knew nothing. They were advancing into a kill zone and didn't even know it. This is why German tank kill ratios were so lopsided. A single Tiger crew could destroy 5, 10, sometimes 15 enemy tanks before withdrawing. Not because the Tiger was invincible, but because they fought smart. They fought patient. They let the enemy come to them. Let me give you a specific example. Otto Carius, second highest scoring tank ace of the war. 150 plus confirmed kills. July 1944. Malinava, Eastern Front. Carius and his Tiger are positioned on the edge of a village. His crew spots a Soviet tank column approaching. 17 T-34s. Carius has one Tiger. The odds are insane. His loader is panicking. "We should retreat." Carius refuses. He studies the approach. The Soviets are moving fast, overconfident. They don't expect resistance. He lets them get closer. 800 meters, 600 meters. His gunner is begging to fire. Carius waits. 400 meters. The lead T-34 stops. The commander is surveying the village. He's looking for threats. Carius still doesn't fire. Then the T-34 fires at a building. Just a reconnaissance shot to see if anything fires back. Nothing does. The Soviets relax slightly. They think the village is clear. And that's when Carius strikes. He destroys the lead tank, then the rear tank. The column is trapped on the road, can't advance, can't retreat. Carius systematically destroys all 17 tanks in under 7 minutes. The Soviets never knew where he was shooting from. They fired wildly in all directions, hit nothing. By the time they figured out his position, it was too late. Carius withdrew without a scratch. 17 kills, 1 Tiger. Because he waited. Because he let the enemy reveal themselves first. Now let's talk about the technological advantage that made this tactic even more effective. German optics, Zeiss lenses. The Germans had the best gun sights in the world. Their gun sights were so superior that they could identify targets at ranges where Allied crews couldn't even see them. A Tiger commander could spot an enemy tank at 2,000 meters. The enemy couldn't spot the Tiger until they were within 800 meters. That's a massive advantage. And German tank commanders exploited it ruthlessly. They would engage at long range, where their superior optics and gunnery gave them an unbeatable edge. They would fire, kill, reposition, before the enemy even knew they were under attack. But the key was still patience. Even with superior optics, firing too soon meant losing the element of surprise. So they would watch, track, wait for the perfect moment, and then strike with overwhelming precision. The Allies eventually figured out what the Germans were doing. After losing hundreds of tanks to ambushes, they started developing counter-tactics. They would send forward scouts, cheap, expendable tanks to draw fire. They would use artillery to saturate suspected ambush positions. They would coordinate attacks with infantry to flush out hidden tanks. And they would advance in overwhelming numbers. So many tanks that even if the Germans destroyed 5 or 10, 20 more would keep coming. This is how the Allies eventually overcame German tactical superiority. Not by being better, but by being more. By accepting casualties that would be unthinkable to the Germans. By grinding down elite crews through sheer attrition. But even then, the Germans maintained their doctrine. Shoot second, shoot accurate, shoot lethal. Right until the end of the war. Here's what makes this story so fascinating. The Germans weren't winning the war. They were losing badly. But on a tactical level, Crew versus crew, tank versus tank, they were dominant. A well-trained German tank crew could defeat 5, sometimes 10 Allied tanks. Not because their tanks were better, though the Tiger and Panther were excellent, but because their tactics were better. Because they understood something fundamental about combat. Aggression feels strong, but patience is stronger. Action feels safe, but waiting is safer. Shooting first feels like taking control, but shooting second gives you actual control. This is a lesson that goes way beyond tank warfare, in business, in negotiations, in life. The person who acts first often acts with incomplete information. They're reacting to what they think is happening. The person who waits, who observes, who lets the other side reveal themselves, they act with complete information. They're responding to what is actually happening. And that's a decisive advantage. Now let's talk about the cost of this tactic, because it wasn't free. Waiting to shoot required incredible discipline, and not every crew had it. Young, inexperienced commanders would panic. They'd see an enemy tank and fire immediately. Sometimes they'd miss. Sometimes they'd hit, but not destroy the target. And then they'd die, because they revealed their position for nothing. The Germans tried to train this out of them. They ran simulations. They drilled patience. They promoted commanders who demonstrated fire discipline. But in the chaos of battle, instinct often won over training. And those crews didn't survive long. The other cost was psychological. Sitting in a tank, watching an enemy, not shooting, that's terrifying. Your crew is looking at you, waiting for the order to fire. And you're doing nothing. You look weak. You look scared. You look indecisive. It takes an incredible amount of confidence to sit there and wait, to trust your judgment, to know that waiting is the right call even when every instinct says to act. That's leadership under pressure, and it's rare. By 1945, the tactical brilliance of German tank crews didn't matter anymore. The Allies had too many tanks, too many planes, too much fuel, too much ammunition. German tanks were running out of everything: fuel, ammo, spare parts, trained crews. Even if they ambushed perfectly, even if they destroyed 10 tanks for every loss, the math didn't work. The Allies could replace their losses. The Germans couldn't. So elite German tank crews kept fighting, kept ambushing, kept shooting second and hitting first. But they were fighting a losing war. Not because their tactics failed, but because tactics alone can't overcome strategic collapse. Still, their doctrine lived on. After the war, NATO studied German tank tactics extensively. The Soviet Union studied them. Every modern military studies them. The principle of shoot second, shoot smart is now standard doctrine in armored warfare. The Germans didn't invent ambush tactics, but they perfected them. They turned waiting into a weapon. They turned patience into lethality. And they proved that in a fair fight, the side that shoots first usually loses, because there's no such thing as a fair fight. There's only the fight where you have more information than your enemy.
Here's what haunts me about this story. The German tank crews were incredibly skilled, incredibly disciplined, incredibly effective, and they were fighting for an evil regime. Their tactical brilliance was in service of a cause that deserved to lose. So what do we do with that? Do we admire the skill while condemning the cause? Do we study the tactics while rejecting the ideology? I think we have to, because tactics are morally neutral. A technique is just a technique. It's the purpose you use it for that matters. And the lesson of waiting, of observing, of acting with complete information, that's valuable regardless of context. The Germans used it to fight a war they should have lost. But the principle itself is universal. Don't act first. Don't react blindly. Don't reveal yourself until you know exactly what you're dealing with. Watch, wait, learn, then strike with precision. That's not a military tactic. That's a life strategy. June 13th, 1944. Normandy. That Tiger tank I mentioned at the beginning? After destroying 4 Shermans, it withdrew, repositioned a mile away. 2 hours later, another American column came down the same road. The Tiger ambushed them too. 3 more Shermans destroyed. 7 kills in 1 day, 0 losses. The Tiger crew survived until August, then they ran out of fuel. They destroyed their tank and surrendered. They didn't lose a fight, they lost a war, because individual excellence can't overcome systemic failure. But here's the thing. Those Sherman crews that died, they weren't bad soldiers. They weren't poorly trained. They were brave. They were competent. They just fought the wrong way. They advanced aggressively. They engaged when they saw a target. They followed their instincts. And their instincts got them killed. The Tiger crew did the opposite. They suppressed their instincts. They waited when everything told them to act. They watched when everything told them to shoot. And they survived. Not because they were braver, but because they were smarter. That's the lesson. That's the takeaway. In any conflict, any competition, any high-stakes situation, the side that acts first usually reveals too much. The side that waits learns everything, and the side that learns everything wins. The German tank commanders understood this. They built an entire tactical doctrine around it, and it worked, right until the moment the war itself became unwinnable. But the principle remains. Don't shoot first, watch first, learn first, then shoot once. With perfect aim, with perfect timing, with perfect information. That's not cowardice, that's mastery. And it wins every time.